You're good.
Go.
We're
Okay.
streaming now. Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you, everybody, for being here at the Motor Vehicle and Transportation Subcommittee. Today is March 20th at 4:30 in the afternoon. We have 4 to 5 things on the agenda today, so we'll take it from the top until Patrick gets on, and that is House Bill 964. That is Delegate Parrott's bill, the vehicle laws governing right-hand lanes, interstate highways, and rural areas. I think we have worked out a compromise on this bill that kind of makes everybody happy. And I will tell you
that that's unusual.
I know, right? I'm excited. I mean, it's taken some work, but I think we can move this bill. So until Patrick gets on, I'll just go ahead and say that the main piece that we need on this bill, which I think Patrick is working on or has worked on, is an amendment that basically says you can't get pulled over, you can't get a fine, you can't be incarcerated, it's not a misdemeanor, it's nothing. So basically what we're doing is setting driving the left-hand lane, where pretty much what the bill does is it makes it official state policy to do so. We do have a letter from the Black Caucus that doesn't have any objections to the bill. And I see, I personally don't see any issues. I think we've worked everything out, but I want to open it up for discussion, and then we'll let Patrick, when he gets in, to talk about.
Will there be signage?
Yes.
Yeah.
Saying move out, slower traffic, move right? Or
Yeah.
along those lines?
There are some of those signs already.
Yeah, not enough.
But
Not
yeah,
enough.
I think the good thing about this is it pretty much makes it state policy without actually,
Is the wording of the sign set in the legislation?
I'll let Patrick talk to that.
I can't find my bill files, but what was the question, Delegate Healy?
Is the wording on the sign set in the legislation?
I do not believe so.
No.
Is Delegate Parrott here?
I am. I don't.
Is the wording? I don't think it is.
Specified.
It's probably best to leave it up to SHA anyway. They have to follow federal stuff.
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
what I was going to suggest. I think that would be a better way to just rely on the state highway to
And just so everybody knows,
design so it conforms with national standards and all that.
Absolutely. And just so you know, there are a few of these signs. Delegate Holmes sent me a picture of them standing on a highway by one of them. But I think the reason I like where we are with the bill now is because it instead of them just doing it, it sets state policy again without anybody, without any of the downsides. Patrick, do you have the amendment done, or what are your thoughts on
What amendment are we talking about?
The amendment of non-incarcerability, no fines, no.
Well, that's in the bill.
Okay.
The only amendment was
I'm sorry, give me one second. The only part was that, as I recall, there was a little bit of ambiguity, and I want to eliminate any ambiguity whatsoever.
Hello.
Right, Neil, do you want to speak on that ambiguity as far as being pulled over or fined? Right, I want to make sure that's all out of the bill completely.
right. So the only question was, someone said that we had to have some kind of penalty with the bill. So the amendment says that the penalty is, if you're pulled over for something else, you can't be pulled over for this. If you're pulled over for something else, you may be issued a warning, and that's it.
Okay.
So that's what the amendment says.
Who would have an issue with that?
No one.
I don't necessarily have an issue with that, but that's not how you presented that's not how it was presented and signed off by.
Oh, it is. He had a copy, he even looked at the amendment when I showed him the bill, the amendment, and the fiscal, Daryl Barnes.
Okay.
And so that's what he signed. I can send that.
I don't remember it that way, Delegate Parrott.
So basically what you're saying is, if you're pulled over for talking on your cell phone and you happen to be driving slow in the left-hand lane, they will acknowledge the fact that, hey, while you're playing on your phone, you're driving in the left-hand lane, too slow, don't do that.
You can get a warning for that. That's it.
And
Yeah,
what is
but hold on a second. That's not what was discussed with the chair.
Okay.
In all of my conversations with the chair, Delegate Parrott, we did not discuss that there was any warning. In
They're
all of
supposed
my
to ignore
interactions with the chair, it was discussed that there was not any of that in this bill whatsoever.
So in the letter, because that Delegate Barnes signed today, here's the letter he signs,
Okay,
page 2 where he signed it. This is, we attached the bill, the fiscal note, and then this amendment was also part of it. And I talked it over with the delegate. I could give you the number of the amendment if that helps.
no, what, the
Can
problem
you-
that we have right now, I'm
I
sorry.
don't mind not having the amendment if it's just, the only reason was somebody brought up that there needed to be some kind of enforcement, which this is just a warning, only if you're pulled over for something else. I don't mind not having that in the bill.
We
Okay,
want to make sure that it's, you don't get a warning, you don't get anything.
That's right. That's what I'm gonna make sure you
It'll
get.
be, who cares? I just want signs on the highway saying, move over.
Let's
Right,
just
and you know what?
Keep it clean this year.
the
Keep it
delegate,
clean. You know,
Right.
when we discussed this, the first time, we talked about this year just doing signage.
Let's go.
And if it was a big problem, then we would address enforcement later.
Yes,
So
perfect.
So
deal
let's
with
just
it
do
with
that.
signage.
Yes,
Let's
let's.
just do that.
and let's,
Give me
Okay.
signs,
yeah,
please.
let's all hold. Patrick, is that something that, I know we talked about it, but I don't know, everybody's been swamped, so I don't know if you've gotten a chance to work on that
Well,
amendment.
I don't think that's an amendment. I think that's in the bill. I think you're describing the bill.
Right, but the ability to write a warning,
Oh, I could do an amendment on that, sure.
okay.
We
why
don't
you-
want that. No, that's what we don't.
That's
Forget
what
it.
My
Council was saying.
Forget the warning.
Forget
Forget
the
the
warnings.
warning.
Can
Just,
everybody hold on a sec, everybody please hold on a second. Delegate Learman,
sorry, I was just saying, it sounds like we have consensus, I think, at least of folks who are talking, that
Mhm.
the only amendment that needs to be in the bill is striking any of the warning or penalty provisions and just leaving the signage. That's all we need.
that's
Right?
exactly correct. That is
If
exactly
that's it,
correct.
then I move favorable on that.
Second.
All those in favorable signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? On the bill as amended.
I'm sorry, I was just going back to the bill and I just need to make sure that I'm clear. So the original bill says, it talks about, it talks about specifically, driving slower than the speed of traffic. If all we're saying is that we're going to put up signs on the highway that says slower traffic move,
Right.
then is that, do we even need to talk about that? Shouldn't it just be, put up signs?
We just need it mandated to put the signs up.
That's it. All the bill does now, Delegate Harrison, all the bill does now is essentially state policy, which is you need to move to the right. The left lane is for passing only. There's no enforcement mechanism at all. With the amendment that we just adopted, which was striking all that language.
It's striking all of that.
Mhm.
So there's no warning, there's no enforcement. It's just
No penalties, nothing.
nothing. And that
Just a
was
sign.
my conversation, and that's what I'm comfortable with. I'm not comfortable with.
Go.
And just to be clear, that's what the bill is. We don't have to strike, there's no amendment. That's exactly. what the
Well,
bill-
we have to make sure there's no penalty. We do need an amendment for that.
That's what
Okay.
I want to make sure of.
That's
Okay.
what we just moved. Yep.
That's right.
Right.
That's what we moved. Okay.
Good.
So
Move the bill as amended?
Yep.
Second.
Move the bill. We have a first and a second. Is there any conversation, any discussion on the bill?
Let's
as
go.
amended? Delegate Harrison, are you comfortable? Do you have any questions?
You can move.
Okay, it's been moved. It's been seconded. All those in favor of the favorable signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Neil,
Any
you
abstentions?
did it!
Neil, you did it.
Neil,
Thank you all.
Now, Delegate Neal, your one charge is to get this over to the Senate and convince them on the Senate that we have moved this bill or not moved this bill, passed this bill in so many various forms over the years. Now it's in the perfect form and they need to pass it.
Neil, I'm
Yeah.
coming
Now
with
before
you.
crossover too, so congratulations.
Don't let them amend it. Don't let them
Don't let them amend it.
Senate side. It
Yep,
won't
there's no
pass.
purpose committee here. We've done all the work. Okay. Let's move next in line to Delegate Fisher's bill, House Bill 1098. We have
Did we
some
get an
amendments.
agenda?
Yeah, you could have
Yes.
gotten it.
Check your email.
There's only four on there.
I didn't get it, but it don't matter.
Okay, well, if you want, I'll just tell you it's 1098, which is Delegate Fisher's bill. Elected official state-owned electric vehicle charging stations.
There it is. It's right there.
Yep, there you go.
Favorable.
No, well, hold on a
Second.
second. Hold on
No,
a second. We have some amendments for this bill. So I want to discuss.
We're going to have some amendments for this bill.
What's that?
We're going
If
to
we
draft some
kill it-
amendments.
If we kill it, we don't have to make amendments.
No, we have some amendments for this bill, and I'd like
Okay.
to review those amendments right now.
You
Go ahead, Patrick.
want me to do it?
Yeah, why don't you do it? That'd probably be better coming from you. You do it.
Okay, the amendments come from the chair. He would like to amend it to say that state legislators have to pay for electricity. I know we've got a few owners here.
While they're using the charging stations.
They're using the charging stations. State employees do not. And to put in some intent to the General Assembly language that it's an intent to encourage and promote the purchase and use of electric vehicles among state employees.
That's it.
Can
Okay.
I ask a question?
Sure, Delegate Learman.
So this would mean that any future state buildings or charging units on any state property, state employees would be able to charge for free. Is that correct? If that's
That is-
correct, I like that. But
That is correct,
Yes.
Delegate Learman,
okay.
But not,
but not for elected officials. Us elected officials will pay.
Yeah,
I think he
that's fine.
said the state, the legislature.
Well, the state legislature. Delegate Healy.
Why? And how, is there a mechanism for how legislators pay?
Yes, so it's the
Yes.
charge point system or whatever electric charging stations are installed. They have ways of keeping track of exactly how many kilowatt hours are used, at what time and what charges. The only difference is that right now, they haven't set up a policy to charge those that are using it, but moving forward, elected officials will have to pay when they charge their vehicles using this charge point or any of the official charging stations.
And what's the point of that?
The point of that is to ensure the original intent of Delegate Fisher's bill and keeping the intent of Delegate Fisher's bill, which is that us as elected officials shouldn't be able to charge our electric cars for free.
I don't know why. I mean, I just don't understand. If we get reimbursed for traveling across the Bay Bridge or we get, well, I mean, I think that
But
there's
you can-
lots of things.
But Delegate
That-
Healy, on those cases, you still get reimbursed. You can still put in for reimbursement. For
So
my-
you're going to pay and then get reimbursed for this?
No. So if you are getting paid like your stipend or your mileage for
Right.
official delegate trips, you will still receive that. So if you get paid for, I don't know, 56 cents a mile or whatever it currently is to drive back and forth once a week or to go to a special meeting,
Oh, I
you still
see.
put in that reimbursement. You'll still get that reimbursement.
Oh, I see.
And you
Okay.
won't pay, you'll get the reimbursement just like anybody with an internal combustion engine vehicle.
Okay.
They will put it in.
That
and
makes
get it.
sense.
The only
Okay.
difference is that if you're at one of the state facilities and you decide to plug in, you have to pay. Delegate Jacobs.
Okay. Got that.
All right, thank you. So when the amendment that's being recommended is for all state employees, they can get it for free. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. Just not state elected, like,
Well, then I would recommend that we put a sunset on it because there are 72,000 state employees. And potentially, and if you get the intent, which is to get more employees to buy electric vehicles, you could be getting into some serious money in the next 3 or 4 years,
so what kind of, were you thinking like a 20-year sunset, Jay?
No, I was thinking like 3.
I got an idea.
Nobody's going to have an electric car in 3 years.
Well, then you can
Yes,
renew,
okay.
then you can renew it. But I think with 72,000 employees, you can't just have an open-ended thing for free fuel because
So
2030, in 2030, you got GM or 2035 is going to convert over to all electric vehicles. I
all
mean,
right,
this
so
could
let's,
be potentially a huge fiscal issue.
So
Can we
say
put in a
10
date
Okay,
to
everybody-
review it?
Everybody hold on for a second, please. Delegate Boyce, and then
So
Delegate Anderson.
would it be more appropriate then to put in a date to review this, right? And so, I mean, I don't even know, there were questions that I asked that Delegate Fisher did not know. And so one of those questions is like, is this even causing an issue, right? Are we trying to solve a problem that that doesn't need to be solved, or rather we're finding a solution for a problem that doesn't exist? And so I don't even know, for instance, how many state employees have electric cars? Does the state even collect that information? So for one, so is it, in 5 years, we can evaluate this to see, how many state employees are actually using not only the charging stations, but also how many more people actually even have electric cars? I think just to say in 3 years, it's just cut it. It's just like in 3 years, it's not like everybody's going to all of a sudden buy an electric car. It's not feasible.
Delegate Anderson.
I have two. One is, so you have an electric car, right?
I do.
All right. So I don't. So do you go, I heard they're supposed to start retrofitting gas stations or something to charging stations or something?
I mean, that's a really big policy thing.
But it's not.
There is only one in the entire state of Maryland that I know of, and that is in Tacoma Park. They changed out a gas station.
Do you pay when you go there?
Yes.
Okay, so I would say, this service is free until it's more widespread that you pay in the public venue than you pay everywhere type thing.
Right.
Or, there's another one. With state employees, when they go, are you talking about state vehicles or for state employees' personal vehicles?
State employees' personal vehicle.
All right, so normally they get mileage when they go places?
Well, it could be more of a situation like they're just driving to work, and when they're out.
Okay.
All
right. Okay, well, never scratch that.
That's
'cause I was gonna
probably
say,
what it would be most of the cases.
You could take the electric juice instead of claiming mileage.
Right. Can I make one point, Mr. Chair?
Give me 1 second. The only issue with that is often there is a lot more wear and tear than just charging. It's just like paying for gas. But if you get 50.
It's your option. I mean, you can either, take the mileage, or you can take the electricity.
But what I'm saying is that's not.
You could pay for the electricity.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that's not, well, anyway, the Delegate Learman.
I just wanted to make the point that, even though more and more state officials state employees may have electric cars, this is totally dependent on the state putting in EV chargers.
True.
So, if to Delegate Jacobs' point about, oh my gosh, so many people are going to have electric cars. Well, if we have the same number of electric chargers, it doesn't matter how many people have electric cars because it's based on the charger. So the state will always be in control of figuring out, how much it costs. And so, I would be open to a sunset way out there, just as something to review, because it's never a bad idea to review policies. But this is not the situation where if overnight, half of the workforce got electric cars, we would then be paying for them to have electricity in their cars, because we would still only have a handful of chargers at state office buildings. So just wanted to raise that.
Thank you. And the simple fact of the matter is, like Delegate Learman said, they actually have to be available. So it doesn't work if they show up to work and there are no charging stations there. So
that's true.
What does the committee? So it seems like there's some consensus around all of these amendments, but there seems to be some concern with wanting a sunset. Is everybody okay with the amendments as presented? And then we'll talk about the sunset.
Sure.
Everybody okay?
Yeah.
One question.
Yes, Delegate Parrott.
Is the sponsor okay with these amendments?
I don't know. I haven't.
It's the honey badger. He don't care.
Yeah.
It's the committee's bill now.
It's not a local bill.
And on top of all that, Delegate Parrott, my understanding of the sponsor's issue is making sure that elected officials are pay, and that's what this exactly would do. House of Delegates and senators will pay. So are there any other questions on the amendments that Patrick just talked about?
Move the amendments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of the favorable on the amendments, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, any
Okay.
opposed? Okay, now to Delegate Jacobs' point. How does the committee feel? I mean, I think that Delegate Boyce made a really good point. I mean, we're going to be some time away.
10 years.
10 years?
Yep.
To sunset or to review?
Well,
The
let's
sunset
see.
is a review.
Yeah.
Okay, done.
10
Okay.
years.
10 years? Are you?
5 years,
9.
10.
5 years.
10,
It's-
10, 10.
I'm gonna stand with Delegate Jacobs.
9. We'll make it 2030.
Listen, there's no problem to put another bill in to extend the sunset.
Look,
Not a problem.
if
That's
it's
an
10
easy-
years, whatever it takes, I just want the
10
honey
years
badgers
is-
to get a bill.
10 years is too long on this.
Okay,
sunset.
well then what about what Carl said about 8 years or 9 years? I'm
Go.
trying to make everybody happy, but I don't.
Wait,
wanna-
No, we don't, our job is not to make people happy. Our job is to do the right thing. So what year is this? 2021?
So
So 2030 would be 9 years.
Your
9
your
years.
thinking process, Delegate Boyce, I don't want to say I'm thinking for you, but 2030 is our RPS, Clean Energy Jobs Act reporting date is by 2030. Our goals are to be 50% energy by 2030. I don't know if that's what you're thinking, but that kind of strikes me as what you're thinking or what I'm thinking, and that's 9
Sounds
years.
nice.
2030 would be,
2030 looks like a good year.
it looks like a nice even year.
So we expired in
What does
2030.
Carl think?
He's good with
Carl
it.
says yes.
This is for the honey badger.
No, this is for,
No,
No, it's
not.
not.
No, it's
Oh,
not.
yes, it is.
You better,
not.
I'll tell
This
you
is for our
something.
state employees.
You
Thank
guys
you.
better, think about it. 72,000 employees and you got taxpayers that are paying the bill.
If it ain't no
So-
charger, there ain't no electric.
so, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
do you know the number? Do you know the percentage of individuals in the state currently with electric cars?
I don't know the exact number, but it's probably less than 1%.
Okay,
We
so.
would have no way of knowing that.
Right, so I'm just trying to make a comparison. If only 1% or less has electric cars now, do we really think in 9 years, 50% of the population? I mean, like, let's use that as a test. 72,000 people, if 1% have it now in 10 years, we really think like half the fleet is gonna have electric cars? I don't think so. It's just not,
No,
the
and it
math
doesn't
doesn't
even,
make sense.
right. And it doesn't even matter because even if every employee had an electric vehicle, all that matters is the number of chargers that we have on state property.
That's true.
So,
That's that's absolute logic dictated here. It doesn't matter how many employees we have. All that matters is how many chargers we have. And if we have enough chargers, then the employees will use it. But if they don't have chargers, it doesn't matter whether they have an electric car, they're not going to charge it.
Good point. 2030?
2030.
And Dave, you know next year what
Right.
the bill's gonna be, right? About electric chargers.
Oh, this is next year we'll extend the sunset to 2040 or 50?
That's funny. That's
Well,
funny.
you just passed one on electric chargers.
Or did?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, I think it's, I think it's a good compromise. It puts us in line with the Clean Energy Jobs Act, which we passed years ago. And if Delegate Jacobs, if it becomes a really big problem, we can put in a bill to change it.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, that works both ways, you could put a 5-year in and all you gotta do is extend it.
But you know what? The effective date, it's 2030, so it's really effectively 8 years, Jay.
I move an amendment that it ends in 2030.
Okay.
Second,
All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
I,
No,
All those opposed? Okay. Any abstentions? Showing 2 opposed. Okay, so the bill carries. Okay, let's now go to HB 1147. This is Delegate Parrott's bill. This is another bill that Delegate Parrott worked hard on, and I have worked with him to try and figure out a way, if there's a way to pass this bill. I am not sure that there is. So with that said, we have a pretty significant fiscal note. which I think is kind of complicated on this bill. And for those of you that don't know, this is the bill that modernizes our traffic intersections. That's when you lose electricity and the lights go dark and sometimes accidents happen when we lose electricity. So this would provide a battery backup for the intersections. We're already deploying this. This would just kind of set it in law and accelerate it a little bit. But there is a fiscal note. The problem is it's really hard to interpret the fiscal note because we're kind of already doing this anyway, but it is a pretty significant fiscal note. So with that said, Delegate Parrott, do you want to talk just generally about, tell us what the fiscal note is and what your thoughts are, because you know what the deal is from the speaker, right? Anything over $100,000 is really heavily scrutinized, and this is I think a little bit more than that. Although
Yeah,
I
I
love the
thought we
policy.
couldn't pass anything.
You can't.
So anything
No.
more than 100,000, we can't pass.
That-
Well, this is over a 11-year period, so it doesn't happen until 2032. But it is $1 million over the 11 years. So that's like a little bit, what's it, about $100,000 a year.
Yeah,
So
but
it's
you're
right-
committing, but the difference there, Delegate Parrott, is you're committing the state to 10 or 11 years at that. This is not just that you can't logically make the argument that this is a 1 year, $100,000 bill.
Correct, because it's over time, right?
Patrick,
I
if
mean,
you
I
want to,
suggest, it seems like Delegate Parrott, I would suggest, I mean, talking with the chair of appropriations, either this year or in future years, to figure out if this is something that we could do. And if that hasn't happened, I don't know how we pass it. So.
yeah, I mean, I will tell you, Delegate Parrott, just as I think a majority of this committee told you a few years ago, we really liked the idea of the left-hand bill, and it took a couple of years, 3 years to get it right. I really like this idea. The fiscal note is a massive impediment to moving forward. I think Delegate Learman has some really good ideas about trying to work out the logistics of that fiscal note and try and bring it down over the years. Is there any other comments?
Or see if it can be affordable. I mean, the state does have money. If you talk to MDOT and SHA along with the chair of appropriations, I mean, maybe they put it in the budget or maybe they support that.
Mhm.
If it costs money, they will spend money if it's a priority.
And they're already partially doing it. Delegate Healy, I know you had your hand up.
Yeah, my question, I mean, I like this idea too. And I particularly, if sometimes we don't need to pass legislation to make something happen. If it's already happening, we just want to say that it's our policy that they, as they can, that they keep things up to date. And when I saw the title of this before I read the bill, I thought about other kinds of technology that are being used in some parts of the country that certainly would save not only money, but probably lives, because and have traffic flow better because they can not have to, manually set the timing for the traffic lights, and the back up a mile away in a different direction, it can be adjusted. And so, I mean, I just think that just staying on top of technology is a good thing, and not because we get behind all the time. And so I'm thinking more in terms of not something necessarily with a fiscal note, but with something with kind of direction, like a policy that the transportation systems of the state should be, it's the policy of the state that they can be kept up to date with newer technologies as they can afford it.
Anybody else like to comment? Hold on one second, Delegate Parrott. Okay, Delegate Parrott, you're on.
Well, I really like what Delegate Healy just said, because we could get rid of the whole fiscal note and just say that it's the policy of the state highway and the municipalities that whenever they put in a new signal, that they incorporate LEDs, which they already do. That doesn't need to be law because they always do LEDs now for new signals, but that the batteries should be there as well. That would set a new policy, and that would be a big help moving forward.
Yeah,
So why don't we hold the bill and you can talk to MDOT about that.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you right now, Delegate Parrott, I'm not saying I disagree with that. I like the idea of moving in this direction, but I am uncomfortable moving forward, given all the variety of fiscal notes we have on this, and given what I think Delegate Healy said, which is a really good point about technology, potentially changing a lot. So if you want to hold it, we can hold it. Otherwise, we're going to move unfavorable, or I'll move unfavorable, or somebody will. The fiscal note, this is very different from your last bill. Your last bill took 3.5, 4 years to come to that conclusion, and I'm not comfortable with making that decision on the fly right now. What's your pleasure, Delegate Parrott?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just looking at the testimony. MDOT SHA did provide testimony where they do say they're using some of this. If the committee's not comfortable just making it suggested that they put in batteries, I think that would be one positive thing.
Delegate Parrott?
Delegate Parrott, why don't you hold it then, okay? And then we can you could get an amendment to say that, because we don't have an amendment in front of us right now. So I don't know, if you want.
And I will tell you right now, Delegate Parrott, I'm not comfortable moving forward until we have a lot more answers. We moved forward on your other bill because we worked it and we got the answers. And I don't feel comfortable at all making this up as we go.
Let's just go ahead and vote on favorable then.
Well, you could withdraw it and read.
Yeah. Why don't you withdraw it?
But you don't think you have time to talk to MDOT about it?
I think MDOT's fine with it based on their letter, but I don't think there's enough time between Monday afternoon to have the amendment completed and dot all the i's and cross all the t's.
Yeah. I just think it'd be better if we just, you have the opportunity here to withdraw it and work on it over the interim and come back with something that we've.
And I'll help
with
you.
MDOT.
I think it's a good policy. I'll help you over the interim.
All right, let's do that. I'll withdraw it now.
Withdrawn. Great.
Okay. And then,
Can you, Delegate Parrott, if you could send a letter to Kumar?
Just an email, is that fine?
yep, that's fine.
Email's fine this year, yes.
Okay, thanks.
It can be, I hereby withdraw House Bill 1147. Thank you very much, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the next one, Patrick, you and I haven't gotten completely up to speed on the options for 1297. Do you want to talk about it? I know we have it on the agenda.
Yeah, the ideas on this have kind of bounced around, so I'm not really sure where we're at. I tried to talk to the chair before this meeting, but he had to walk his dogs, but he's back. But basically, we talked about, in terms of you drive down a highway and it's dedicated to a slain police officer or a veteran or sometimes a senator or a delegate, and those are dedications. And State Highway has an office for that, or not an office, but a process for that. That if you want to dedicate a highway after somebody, they have kind of standards, and you give it to them. And the thought is that we should check with them, and I think they'd be amenable, because I think they'd much rather have their own process that they set up than have the General Assembly set up a process for them to allow local governments, citizens, anyone in Maryland, approach them when they think that there's some sort of an inappropriate name or outdated name or a need to change a name on a highway, and to have them set up that process. Because I think the idea is, I don't think we want to see these bills coming before the General Assembly. And
that was our big conversation.
We'd have 40 of these next year.
And that's the big part of the conversation, is because whenever we pass the golf cart bill or whenever we pass these bills, the next year we get 3, then 8, then so the idea was that we don't want to get in the middle of renaming roads. What we'd like to do ultimately, I think, if the subcommittee agrees, is formulate an idea of which by we create a mechanism so that locals, the local population, can figure out what they want to name their road.
So could the bill essentially, because I think these are important, especially as relates to inappropriate names.
Right.
Is it appropriate that the bill establishes that the name must change and that it is left up to the jurisdiction to make that change?
If you do that, you're setting a precedent you don't want to.
Well,
Yeah.
You know what? I think this is a precedent that I do want to set, because we do have very inappropriate, demeaning, quite frankly, disgusting names of streets, and that we call them these streets and we don't know where it comes from or why. And we kind of keep doing it. And I think it is a precedent to actually see, because some of these names, or most of them, need to change.
Not arguing that, but the point is, what process do you want to use to do that?
Well, let me ask this question, because I know we've talked about it a couple of times. I guess there are two options that I've kind of explored through conversation. One of those options is pushing it to MDOT and saying you use whatever you already use, or we could come up with some mechanism in law. It would take some work. I don't think we can do it today, but we could do it next week. But that basically puts some mechanism into law that says that, MDOT shall create a mechanism by which local jurisdictions are, I don't know, if consulted on name changes of roads or I mean, it's almost like we need
Or can petition.
Yeah,
I think
like,
Andrea wants to say something.
I'm
I
sorry,
think that
Dr. Love.
makes sense.
Andrea wants to say something. She's had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No worries. So I had a conversation with Delegate Walker some time ago about this because, well, first of all, Senator Patterson also has a bill that is conflicting. It has a different name. They're in the same district. They've got issues or whatever.
So
But
they have another bill that's a completely different name?
yes.
Okay.
And
this is it, yeah.
And then, when I mentioned to him, first of all, I want to agree with Delegate Boyce about, the offense of it. We just went through this whole big thing about the Washington football team, and it took years for that. But, the history of the name of this particular street, in my opinion, is even more offensive than what the Washington football team was. And so it is very appropriate for us to look at changing this. And, I don't know about the mechanism. I don't know about the policy, but I think that we do need to set a precedent. It's time for it. It's time to make the change. What the change is or what the name should be, I think is still up in the air. Because that area was inhabited by, I think it was Piscataway Indians.
Yes.
It might be more appropriate to name it after, one of the prominent Indians. I don't know. And I don't make that decision, but what I don't think that, I think that we need to make a change. I'm not comfortable with moving on 3rd Marshall Highway. I'm not comfortable moving on Barack Obama Highway. I'm not comfortable on the whole dedicating. That to me is just not acceptable. So I'm not sure where we go from there, but that's my 2 cents on this. So there.
Thank you. So I will say to your point, Delegate Harrison, I did speak to the bill sponsor as well, and he has the same position. He, after the bill hearing, we had a conversation. He said, I think that I learned a lot out of that bill hearing. Basically, I don't want to prescribe the name. I want to figure out how, the community can prescribe the name, whether that's, in consultation or polling or voting or whatever it may be. So that's basically, he said the same thing. Delegate Healy and then Delegate Anderton.
Thank you. And I agree with what's been said so far. I think it does need to change. One of my concerns we haven't talked about is that this bill only addresses the stretch of Indian Head Highway that is in Prince George's County. Indian Head Highway all the way down to Indian Head, which is the name of a town in Charles County. So I think that we need to start thinking about not just this stretch of this is disgusting now that we know where it came from and what it means, but we need to come up with a policy. I'm not sure if we can do it with timeframes we've got. I do think we should do something to set a precedent, or at least make some kind of a statement that there are extremely inappropriate names on highways and roads that, I mean, our state highway system is numbered, so we don't really need to use names at all, but people do because they took what was originally a pathway and turned it into a highway. And they gave it a number, but they didn't change the name. So I think it's a tough situation. I mean, what we have in my neighborhood is East-West Highway, and it was East-West Highway. It's 410, and it's got 7 or 8 different names if you drive along it in different neighborhoods, but everybody calls it East-West Highway, and it's Maryland 410. So I don't know how we deal with this at this point, but I want to.
Well,
So
and I want to.
Mr. Chair.
And I want to do, hold, please, everybody, hold on for a second. I want to deal with it too. I just think that you bring up some, a lot of good points have been brought up, which is there are a lot of these names and town names and road names that are all, they're all going to have conversations about changing, because even now, just using the term of this highway, of just saying Indian Head Highway, now that we know more about it, just saying that, I'm like, oh my God, I'm actually saying that. Okay, let me go in order. Delegate Anderton, Delegate Love, and then Delegate Learman.
Yeah, real quick, just to follow up on Delegate Harrison's comments. She triggered a conversation, of course, I've had with the bill sponsor.
You are visibly African American, right? Right. Visibly Asian, and I noted.
Are you
swearing in? You were.
somebody's
Delegate
not
Learman, I
muted.
think you have your radio on.
Yeah. The bill's a conversation with the bill sponsor, and if the bill had to be redrafted, it would have been drafted requesting a name change to Piscataway Highway based off the fact that that area was originally inhabited by the Piscataway Indian tribe. And so, of name options, that seems to be the one that's being coalesced around. I'm not suggesting we amend the bill to say that, but I'm just saying that is the direction that the locals who represent that area travel now. And I think it's very befitting. And I don't know how we go about doing this. Even if we just craft a letter to State Highway, not necessarily requesting, but somehow or another mandating they put a process in now to change this name, so that way by the time we come back in January, we're referring to that road as Piscataway Highway or something else, and not what it is now. I don't want to delay. I don't want to not move forward and have to wait a whole another calendar year before we have this
Yeah,
conversation.
agreed. I think
Right.
we need to do something. I'm just not.
Right.
Okay, Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to what you and Patrick said early on, I like the idea, because I agree with what everyone has said. I like the idea of mandating that MDOT or whoever does this come up with a policy that jurisdictions can apply for a name change, or communities can apply for a name change. And I think that's probably the best way to go. But to Delegate Anderton's point, maybe if we can, push the timeline a bit and get them really moving on it, that would be a good idea.
Yeah, well, and the other part too is it's several times in this conversation, we've used the term Indian Head Highway, and we've used the term Indian, and it's really Native American. That's really what they are.
Mm-hmm.
They're not from India, but this
Indigenous.
indigenous. This is what we have. That just becomes part of our vernacular. We don't even know anything. And I think Delegate Boyce or somebody said it earlier about the Redskins, and we just grew up saying that, and now we're like, oh my God, what have we been saying all these years? So who was next? Delegate Learman, I think you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think it would be great. I agree with everything that's been said. We have to do this. A couple thoughts to add. I think we should mandate MDOT and SHA coming up with a process. We could make it an emergency bill so it goes into effect right away. And I think it might be worth drafting some whereas clauses so that there's legislative history about why we're doing this, right? So that it goes to just so that we can demonstrate that we're doing this because we recognize that, traditionally MDOT and the state has, named some of its property offensive things and that are, pretty outrageous and we need to fix it. And so I just wanted to offer that, those two ideas to add on to the thought of of mandating that MDOT create a process by which local governments can apply for and create and rename, suggest to MDOT new names for roads.
There it is.
Well, that's what we've, that's what I was kind of opening with is that, so let me just keep going around. I think Delegate Parrott, you are next.
All right, unmuted. Great, thank you. I think it's totally fine to change the name, and I like the direction that we're going to maybe set up a new policy. I do want to talk about the Indian Head name itself. If you go on the website of Indian Head, Maryland, they talk about how they got their name. And if you just go to Wikipedia, they also talk about how they got their name. Basically, a headland, if you look it up, is a narrow piece of land that projects from the coastline into the sea, which is exactly what this is. It's kind of like a peninsula, it's a headland. And in Wikipedia, it says the origin of the name Indian Head originates from the term Indian headlands, as the lower end of the peninsula was occupied by Native Americans and was an Indian reservation. That Indian Head first appears in the census of 1800 and dates to the establishment of the powder factory. So I really have a hard time with, I think, revisionist history, perhaps, because this has been on the map for so long. However, having said that, if people are uncomfortable with it, we need to change it because it needs to be something people can be comfortable with that we're driving on.
Delegate is.
I think that's kind of where we are, Delegate. I mean, people, obviously the people that represent that area are uncomfortable. There's a lot of people uncomfortable with it. And even with that said, even if they weren't uncomfortable with it, the simple fact of the matter is there are dozens and dozens of roads and state roads and highways through the state of Maryland and others, not just highways, but that need to be revised, that need to be addressed. And the locals, I think, probably have some of the, at any rate, does anybody
Yeah, that's why I do
Yes.
support the policy. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm sorry to come back around, but I will say, I think that there is already a precedent because in my community, Maryland 704 used to be called George Palmer Highway, and it is now called Martin Luther King Jr. Highway. So I think MDOT already does have a procedure, or there's certainly precedent if it hadn't been done before.
Right.
It was done then. I think that the issue sounds like to me the direction is already set. The only other thing that I was going to say is it appropriate to, send MDOT a letter to say that we want this dealt with, basically, and maybe this particular.
I'll be communicating
but
with
I think
MDOT
that
the next couple of days about this. We'll know more on Monday.
I was going to say, it sounds like we have a direction in which to go in working with them so that we can, get something moving on it. But it's been done. It's been done before. So,
right, so I think the big thing at this point is, I know Patrick has been, it's just, this is what kind of happens at the end. We get really, really crazy busy. It's the weekend. There's nobody at MDOT really to talk to. And I know Patrick has reached out to them several times during the last week or two. And unfortunately, by the time they get finished playing phone tag, it's 8 o'clock at night and they're not there anymore. So the big challenge I think we have is not necessarily what we want to do. It's getting the timing and the ability to figure out, like, fine tuning it. As I said, the conversations I've had with the chair and others is about creating some kind of mechanism. And we need to figure out whether that mechanism already exists, to Delegate Harrison's point, or whether we need to put it in legislation and amend this bill to do that, and direct them to do it. And maybe we have the whereas, as Delegate Learman said. Does that sound like a good general direction everybody is comfortable going in?
Yes.
Yes.
Can I just
the voice.
say one thing to Delegate Parrott's point? I get it, right? Like, historically, that's been the name, but historically, we have not called people by their names, right? We either call them by nicknames or by the way they look that are offensive and derogatory. And so I get that that's been the name, and I'm certainly somebody who is a traditionalist. I like traditions. I think, but if it was always Piscataway, we wouldn't be asking this question, we wouldn't be having this discussion. I think the problem with it is it's how it's been named, not necessarily how it got its name. And I understand exactly what you've read, but it's the same thing with Redskins, right? Like if it was black skin or white skin or purple skin, you know, it is, and I understand even with that, it was supposed to mean talking about a past football coach and quote unquote trying to speak to the pigskin, but it's still, forward facing. It's just like, oh, that's what that meant. There's so many words and so many sayings and phrases that we say now, even in my own culture and, in Caribbean culture that have, for instance, roots in slavery. And so how do I start changing how I say those things? And this is just a coming around and a closure to really respecting things and respecting people and at least calling people by their name. If we're going to call it by its name, let's call it by its name.
Preach.
Delegate Jacobs has his hand.
Yeah, Delegate Jacobs has his hand up.
I had it up about 20 minutes ago, but I gotta use my longer fingers, I guess.
You got to use that little thing.
Anyhow, years ago, we had several requests to name roads, and we decided then, this committee did, that we didn't want to get into that business, that we didn't want people coming in every year, bring names in, and we actually had MDOT create a process, to rename those roads. And I think Patrick probably talked about that a little bit in the beginning. I'm certainly in favor of creating a process, especially locally as possible, to have the locals come up with whatever name they feel is appropriate. But at the same time, I don't think legislation is necessary. I think a letter from us that MDOT would react to that just as strongly as a piece of legislation. But I think a process needs to be created,
right?
And to keep that naming away from the House, from the legislature, because we don't want to get into that business.
I can tell you how much I agree more. I mean, I think that and also Delegate Anderson, my last conversations with the maker of the bill sponsor was that he was comfortable with the process that we're coalescing around, like where.
Go.
What's that?
Let's go.
Okay, so what I would recommend, unless somebody else has something else, just because of the time of where we are in session, do you want to continue to try to getting a hold of MVA or MDOT on Monday, Patrick? And then
Yes.
I don't know how we're going to get through this before crossover, but we need to do it right. And it's obviously a lot of issues, right?
And this bill might have enough juice to get through rules.
I think it would,
might.
yes.
Yep,
Delegate Healy, are you still chair of rules?
I still am, yes.
Send this to Senate bill.
But I take my marching orders from the speaker, however, so
Here you go.
it has to have enough juice to go all the way up to the top of the pyramid first. But
And
I
can
was,
I-
We can make the case, but we can make the
okay,
case.
let me just say one more thing about that process thing, because if we're gonna, I think we should try to press forward as much as we possibly can. I'd suggest that David and you and Kumar would talk to your counterparts in the Senate so that you have some kind of an agreement that whatever we work out will slide through on both sides and not get held up in the process.
Yeah, this would go to JPR, right? So I can call Will over the weekend.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Will will be like, yep. So I don't know why Will wouldn't be super.
Yeah, but to take nothing for granted.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Delegate Healy, absolutely right. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna hold it and try to work out. We have a general idea of a direction as far as MDOT is concerned, to see whether they have a process, and if they don't have a process, whether we need to put together a mechanism in legislation. But I think everybody agrees the idea, we don't want to get into the naming of roads business. Okay, so.
Delegate, Chairman?
Yes.
Can I just emphasize one thing to the subcommittee, that what we're talking about is only an application to state roads. That's all that they have the authority over.
Right,
Yes.
got it.
Just so that's clear.
Yeah, it's not county roads or
Not
municipalities.
county roads, not schools or anything like that.
Right.
Okay,
Towns. Yeah.
Okay, and then the last bill, I mean, I know it's late, if
That's
everybody,
the last.
well, if everybody, I wanted to just.
699.
Yeah, I want to have a brief I know it's tired, I know everybody's tired. And I want to just kind of say for House Bill 699, there have been some amendments that have come around. Let me say this, we work as hard as we can in this committee and in all committees to try to get bills passed and fix them when we can. Sometimes if a bill needs a lot of work or a lot of amendments, it becomes hard to, and then sometimes the committees decide or the subcommittees decide to push back to the bill sponsor and say, these are our concerns, come again next year.
Yes.
Now, in this particular case, the bill sponsor has offered some amendments. I'd like Patrick to talk about them. I think that they can be very problematic, but I do have a potential solution that I've talked to a couple of people about. So Patrick, do you want to talk about the feasibility, the even feasibility or of these amendments, just the generally feasibility of it? I will tell you right now, I have great concern with just dropping the fine and everything else, but I do think that there's a possibility for a compromise on some texts that I've had back.
Well, I'm winging it a little bit here because I don't know where the reprint went.
And David just froze up.
I mean,
Is this the right amendment, Patrick, on the screen?
Hold on a second, Molly.
Okay.
Leave it up there. Let me take a look. That is a draft of the amendment. And I did not send you the actual one because it literally was in the mail about an hour ago.
Oh, I think I have that one.
Oh, do you have that one? But you don't have a
Delegate Davis directly?
Yeah, but you don't have a reprint of it.
No, I don't. I just have the amendment, but I can just put that up.
No, that probably won't help too much.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, guys. Sometimes I get kicked out. I got kicked out. I'm back.
Yeah, you froze up.
Oh, I found it. Okay. Molly, I'm going to send
You're
this to
in the
you.
street. Okay. I'll see you in a minute.
Okay.
Okay, I'll put it up as soon as you send it to me. Okay.
I just sent it to you, Molly. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
So one of the things that, that I was saying, I don't know when I got cut off, is that we try to help and we try to work as much as we can. One of the things that I was thinking on this bill, is the idea of potentially removing the incarcerability of the law, but leaving the fine structure and everything else the way it is. And the reason I say
I'm
that.
okay with that.
You're okay with that?
Yeah, this $50 fine thing, I'm telling you what's going to happen. Me and my people, we ain't going to have no insurance.
Yeah.
I'm going to save $300 a month and hope you pull me over and can send me a $50 fine. So that is not good.
So I was thinking that might be the easiest way after talking to some folks and talking to the chair of the committee and just trying to figure out how we can come together. I'm comfortable with that idea. I don't know what everybody else's feelings are. And Patrick, I don't know what the feasibility between now and Monday of you coming up with an amendment that says that. I don't want to presume anything because I know you're here until 10, 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, I'm way later than that, too.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking into the morning, dude.
Yeah, I kind of like that. That's okay. That's fair.
So the question, well,
Shouldn't go to jail.
How does everybody else feel about it? And Patrick?
I think that makes sense. I think eliminating the fines provisions, but just making sure that we're taking away incarcerability is in line with some of the previous work that we've done this session on for Delegate Moon's bill and others. So I'm fine with that. I think that makes sense. And it's a simple bill, frankly.
It's a super simple bill, and that is in keeping with what we've been doing the last couple of years, that Delegate Moon's been kind of leading the way on incarcerability of some of these issues. Anybody else have any comments on it?
Well, I had a conversation with Delegate Davis and she's okay with that.
Right, and I will say, Andrea, that's different than the amendments that she sent over, but that's what our text was back and forth. So,
Well, I will warn you about one thing.
Yes.
This committee doesn't have jurisdiction over incarcerable offenses. This will get some hackles from judiciary on the floor.
it probably will. And if
Correct.
they had known that, they probably would have jointly assigned it.
Exactly.
So can we see it? Could we see a reprint on Monday morning perhaps, or, I mean.
I can
since we're
send you
having a
one now.
conversation now?
Why don't you?
No, but I mean, I
The
don't
one you're
mean a-
asking about. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't mean a reprint. I have you, thank you for sending what you have now. I looked at it, but a reprint of just removing incarcerability.
And leaving the fine structure the way it currently is. And
Yes.
Patrick, let me ask you, is that something you can get done? And then I'll shop it around over with the chair and with the chair of judiciary to make sure they're all fine with it. And if they're not, then we'll restart, the delegate will just restart next year with going down.
Well, then she'll have a draft to pass in next year.
Yeah, she'll have a draft to pass next year.
She's on judiciary.
It'll already be kind of vetted.
And it can be jointly assigned then.
Yeah.
Actually, it'll probably just go to judiciary.
That's okay too.
Are you okay with that, Patrick? Is that a big thing for you to?
No, I have no problem with that.
Okay.
I think it's a smart thing to run it by Chair Clippinger.
I'll call Luke I'll call Delegate Clippinger over the weekend, and I will also call Delegate Barve, our chair, to make sure he's that he's okay with it as well, just taking into consideration the totality of the circumstances, meaning that it could be an issue with judiciary. We had one, I think, last year, remember, Patrick, where we had one and we ended up slipping back down and we talked.
That was the Ocean City one. That
Yeah.
passed before COVID.
Right, and we got that passed.
Yeah, we would have re-referred it to judiciary, but we didn't have time and we wanted to pass it. So we kept Clippinger in the loop.
Yeah, and I remember kneeling down next to him, having several conversations, basically getting there okay. And, there was a lot of conversations, but once they got bought in on it, they were fine. But I think
we're good.
Here is getting ahead of it. So, okay.
We're good.
I think we are good. Ladies and gentlemen, is there anything that I missed? Anything you wish to discuss?
Piece of chicken grease.